Welcome to Fringe Pop 321, the show that believes the world is stranger than we think, but thinking should not be strange. In January of 2017, shortly after his election to the highest office in the United States, a recently self-appointed Sanhedrin, that's akin to a religious Supreme Court for Judaism, sent President Donald Trump a letter of blessing. Aside from congratulations and prayers, the letter called on the president to follow the 7 Noahide laws of Judaism. The rabbis of this self-appointed Sanhedrin believe that these laws are binding on all humanity, which obviously includes all non-Jews, otherwise known as Gentiles. Now, some people took the gesture as suggesting that this Sanhedrin viewed President Trump as a messianic figure, or that it set the stage for America to become a theocracy. Now, both of those ideas are silly. Neither President Donald Trump nor any other president is the Messiah. The latter, though, may stem from anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, at least for some who would be thinking those thoughts. Sadly, demonizing the Jews is more prevalent than ever in the culture, and it's absurd and immoral. But nevertheless, anti-Semitic conspiracists will point to a joint House resolution in defense of the theocracy idea. Now, it's true that the United States did officially recognize the Noahide laws in 1993 in connection with the passage of the Education Day bill. The House joint resolution can be found on congress.gov or the webpage for this episode. It stated, quote, "Whereas Congress recognizes the historical tradition of ethical values and principles which are the basis of civilized society and upon which our great nation was founded, whereas these ethical values and principles have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization, when they were known as the 7 Noahide laws." Now, there's no suggestion in that document, that resolution, that these laws superintend the Constitution or are now part of the U.S. legal code. There's no indication of being under Jewish laws here, as there would be no indication of being under the Vatican if we had a Catholic president. And that used to be an idea, used to be an issue. So what in the world, though, are these laws? What are Noahide laws, and how should we think about them? Well, let's find out. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that the self-appointed Sanhedrin that reached out to President Trump considers the Noahide laws to be binding on all humanity. It gives it sort of a biblical flavor when you say things like that or think things like that. But the first thing we need to realize and get straight is that these Noahide laws should not be confused with the biblical law of Moses, known as the Torah. One of the distinctions of the religion of Judaism is the Torah. That's a Hebrew word for law. The Torah comprises the first of 3 sections of the larger Jewish or Hebrew Bible. For Christians, the Old Testament, which is called collectively, the entire Bible, the Tanakh by Jews. Traditionally, the Torah was believed to have been written by Moses. Most of the Torah is actually devoted to the foundational stories of human creation and the birth of people that would be called Israel. Through a series of historical events, the people of Israel later became known as Jews. They were the remnant population of the kingdom of Judah, which land was later called Judea in the time of Jesus. But significant portions of the Torah contain laws relating to the governance of the old kingdom of Israel, kingdom of Judah as well, and the worship of those people of their God, Yahweh, the God of the Bible. It also includes instructions about moral behavior by which its people, again Israel or the Jews, should conduct themselves. That's what the Torah is for. But if the Torah was written by Moses, again the Torah is the law of Moses, what are Noahide laws? Noah lived long before Moses in the biblical story. In briefest terms, the Noahide laws are Judaism's version of what we would call today natural law. According to natural law moral theory, the moral standards that govern human behavior are in some sense objective and innate. That is, they are built into the fabric of creation, as though God designed human beings to be inclined toward certain moral behaviors that wound up getting ruined by the fall. The Noahide law concept is similar to that, but more specific. The reasoning goes like this. At the time of the flood, God judged humanity for wickedness. Genesis 6:5 is a good verse for that. How could God do that? How could God judge the people at the time of the flood if there wasn't an already existing moral code? What would be the basis for their judgment? There must be a moral code deriving from creation, therefore. Again, this is how the reasoning goes. God, it is assumed, spelled out the laws of that basic moral code to Noah after saving him from the great flood. And these are the laws that became known as the Noahide laws. Now, if you think this way, approach the problem this way, or the subject this way, the Noahide laws existed long before the Mosaic law, which was specifically given to Israel, but the Noahide laws would again encompass all of humanity after the flood or since the flood. So to this point, we have the idea that there was sort of a natural law that was given to Moses by God, and that's distinct but earlier than the Mosaic law. The next idea we need to sort of think about is that, in fact, there is no Jewish rabbinic consensus as to what these presumed Noahide laws given to Noah actually said, or how many of them there actually were. There's broad agreement on 7 of them, though. Hence, these are what is now referred to as the Noahide laws. These 7 laws are pretty simple. No idolatry, no blasphemy, don't shed blood. They were opposed to incest and adultery. Robbery is forbidden. There's an injunction to establish courts of law in the wider culture. And lastly, number 7, there was a prohibition against eating flesh cut from a living animal. Those are the 7 Noahide laws that Jewish rabbinic thinking typically agrees on. So how should we evaluate this idea? Well, these laws are good, and just one of them, or the one about, making sure that the blood is cooked out of your meat, that one feels a little bit odd, but for the most part, they're sort of normal. Again, you might think, well, what about pork? But that comes from the Mosaic law. We're dealing with laws that, again, we presume, at least those who put forth this idea, presume predate the Mosaic law. So other than the one about food, they sound kind of normative, that they would work in a wider culture. But for now, we need to ask some questions. Are these laws actually biblical? And that's a relevant question since many non-Jews, again Gentiles, accept the idea that the Old Testament is God's Word. But they are Gentiles, they are not Jewish. So why bother with not only laws of Moses' time, but why would we bother with Noahide laws that are exclusive to the Old Testament? Secondly, and this is related to the first, does the Old Testament, part of which again is the Torah, actually teach the concept that Noah received laws from God after coming out of the ark after the flood? Now, it's one thing to say that rabbis think these laws are universal and they think these laws were given to Noah, but it's quite another to say that the Torah itself, again, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, of the Old Testament, actually teaches the idea. And that, it sort of seems, might be important. Now, to this point, we're talking about a concept within rabbinic tradition, Judaism, Jewish tradition, that says that there were laws given to Noah right after the flood that are therefore binding on all humanity. And these laws are called the Noahide laws. And we raise the question of, well, since the flood story is in Genesis, which is part of the Torah, does the biblical story of the flood, or just wider, the Torah, does it actually teach this idea that God gave Noah specific laws that were binding on all humanity? Now, we can answer those questions together by observing that the concept of Noahide laws comes from the Talmud, not the Noah story of the Hebrew Bible. The laws themselves are found here and there in the Torah in various places. But that's well after Noah. If you find these laws in the law of Moses, but not in the Noah story, again, that matters for the sake of this discussion, because the idea is that God gave Noah laws that are binding on general humanity, and that's different than giving laws to the Israelites under Moses, which would just be for Jews. So it really does matter as to where we find these things. There's no mention in the Torah at all about laws actually being given to Noah. That idea comes from, as I just said, something called the Talmud. This is Talmudic theory, or another Jewish term is halakha. That's legal theory in Judaism. So where does this Jewish halakha come from? Well, Jacob Neusner, the leading rabbinic scholar of the 20th century, describes the halakha, Jewish legal theory, of the Noahide laws this way. Quote, halakha not only regulates the conduct of Jews, but also insists on the existence of a universal legal code referred to as the Noahide laws, understood to be binding on all descendants of Noah, that is, everyone. The Talmud enumerates these 7 Noahide prohibitions. And again, we've already looked at that list of 7. Well, that's clear enough. You know, what Neusner says is sort of what we already surmised. The concept of Noahide laws comes from the Talmud, not the Torah. It comes from a book, a body of material that is not the Bible. But what's the Talmud? I mean, how does this have any meaning for us? That's an important question, since many people presume, wrongly, that the terms Torah and Talmud are synonyms. They are not. These terms do not overlap. The Talmud is an assemblage of opinion about the laws of the Torah, written by rabbis that lived centuries after the Torah was composed and completed. I'll quote Neusner again. Again, he is the rabbinic authority. Quote, the Talmud consists of a law code and a commentary on that code. The law code is called the Mishnah and was written around 200 CE, which is 200 AD. It's a systematic exposition of 60 topics. The commentary is called the Gemara. Thus, the Mishnah plus the Gemara equals the totality of what we call, or what Jews call, the Talmud. Simply stated, the Mishnah presents laws and is about life, while the Gemara analyzes laws and is about the Mishnah, unquote. Now together, these things, these bodies of material, are the Talmud, and some of those things are found in the Torah or the Bible. But again, the major point here is that the Talmud and the Torah are not the same thing. One is the Bible, the Torah, the other is not. Before we wrap up this topic, I need to say a word about who it seems gets the most excited or alarmed by the Noahide laws, outside of conspiracy thinking, that is. I'm speaking here of Messianic Christians and mainline evangelicals. Messianic Christians often get very excited about this concept, and mainline evangelicals get a little skittish over it. Now, if you're in one of those groups, again, you might be missing something. On the one hand, the Noahide laws, again, minus the one about eating meat cooked well done, broadly focus on points of morality that are echoed in Christian teaching, like the New Testament. Those moral points certainly produce a stable culture and a stable society. But there's more to the Noahide law idea that Christians won't like, or at least shouldn't like. The Noahide law idea is often articulated with the teachings of the famous 12th century, that is medieval, rabbi Moses ben Maimon, or Maimonides. Here's what he said about them. Quote, whosoever accepts the 7 commandments and carefully observes them is among the pious ones of the nations of the world and enjoys a share of the hereafter, provided that he accepts and performs them. unquote. A biblical scholar, Nahum Sarna, comments on this excerpt from Maimonides that we just read. Sarna writes, quote, Maimonides then goes on to stipulate that if a non-Jew practices these commandments solely for philosophic reasons, he would not be considered among the pious Gentiles who merit a share of the hereafter, unquote. Now, if you're a Messianic believer, Messianic Christian, or broadly an evangelical Christian, and you have a fondness for Jewish things, you might not want to get too enthused about the Noahide laws, because what I just read was a serious shot at your core beliefs. The Noahide law idea is teaching salvation through law keeping. It's a clear contradiction of the Christian notion of salvation by faith in response to the grace of God shown to us on the cross of Jesus Christ. So you might want to check your enthusiasm a little bit for the Noahide laws, or at least be better informed as what is some of the theological baggage that goes along with them. Once again, thank you for watching Fringe Pop 321. Please visit our website. Every episode we do here has a companion web page on our website. And if you like what we're doing at Fringe Pop 321, please support us by going to fp321.com/S, as in the letter S, and donate to our cause. Please come back again and watch more videos. And remember, you need to do that because what you know may not be so.